Hey, glory to Jesus Christ, glory forever. It's great to be back with y'all again. So I've got someone waiting in the green room, Father John, but we're having problems with our video. So I'm sure it's my error. The Skype might have changed some of its settings or something. So you're not going to get to see. Yeah, but there he is. You can see a picture of him now. There he is. He makes the rest of us look bad because he's handsome and fit. But there you go. How long? We'll ask him in a minute how long his hair and beard are, because those are two variations. But let's start before we bring him on to talk about things we didn't learn about in seminary, and whatever else comes into our minds. Let's do the Jesus prayer together. Okay. So remember, we're going to breathe in slowly as we say the first part of the Jesus prayer, and then we are going to pause, and then we'll breathe out slowly as we say the second half of the Jesus prayer, and then we'll pause. And that's called square breathing. It's not the only way that you do the Jesus prayer. It's just the way I do. So it doesn't really matter how you breathe, just pray. Ready? Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Breathe in slowly, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Okay, last time together today. Breathe in slowly, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Okay, let's resume our normal breathing, and you won't be able to see him, but we're going to bring, let's see here, we're going to bring Father John into the conversation. Father John, glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
It's good to hear your voice.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, right. I can't see you. So tell me, I know you well enough to imagine you, so how long's your hair?
It is actually just kind of over my ears. I like to keep a shorter haircut on top. I've never been able to get to the point where I could pull it back into a ponytail. I tried once. It got down to my shoulders, and right when it was about long enough, I said, I had it. This takes like 4 extra minutes in the shower, just picking hair out of my fingers. I'm done with this, and I got rid of it.
Oh, yeah. And how about your beard?
It's shorter than most clergy would like, or traditional clergy would like, but it is there.
Oh, you've got the fashionable stubble going.
Yeah, it's just beyond that. It's the happy medium between traditional clergy and a wife who prefers clean shaven.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, hey, and isn't that a metaphor? That's like it's not just a metaphor. It's like a symbol with a capital S of how to do married Christian ministry, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so important. I mean, you could say, "Well, I priest must have beard," right? And then,
Yeah, and I could put all the pressure on my wife and say, well, I don't have to try anymore. We're married.
right?
Right?
Yeah.
You're stuck.
Come on, yeah. Come on, Matushka, right?
Yep.
It's there. I'm sure it's written down somewhere, right? Along with all those other things I'm suddenly going to demand of you.
Yes.
Yeah, how not to do marriage.
I'm good at that.
Well, yeah. I mean, y'all are well past the honeymoon period, but you're still working stuff out. I have no doubt, because we've been married for sorry,
Get this right.
math, man, 25 years. Yeah, 25 years.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah,
Good year.
I'm pretty sure that, yes. No, wait, we were married in 1990. So what's the math on that? That's 30 years. Oh my goodness. 30 years. Wow. Yeah, and we're still I'm still figuring out what a knucklehead I am. So I'm sure she's known from day one.
Yeah, Matsushka seems less impressed with my antics at this point than when we were courting. Or at least she doesn't smile as politely when I do the same things. She's evolved, I haven't.
Yeah, right. Well, there you go. There you go. You're her holy sandpaper, transforming her into sainthood one antic at a time.
Yes. I like that because I always rub her the wrong way. Sandpaper is a great way to describe me.
Right, yeah. So, for those of you who haven't met Father John Charest, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, I've known you, I think, I was thinking about it. We met, I don't think you may not remember because you were so young. We met in, I think it was 2002, but we really didn't get to know each other until 2007, right?
That 2002 story, though, was very funny. I'm not sure we've ever shared it on the air. Because then when it came, and I didn't remember it until it came back to 2007, and you told me, and my jaw dropped. I was just, oh no, this is my priest?
Yeah, so I was a new Ukrainian, right? So in 2001, I was mobilized as a reservist and sent to the DC area, sent to Charlottesville, and just got really active in the parish there. It was the mission of St. Nicholas in Charlottesville, Virginia. And within a few months, the priest said, hey, Father Robert said, hey, you ever thought about a vocation? And we're not going to go into my story, but yeah, I was like, yeah, but... And he said, well, I want you to, I think you should consider one, and I'd like for you to be our bishop. And so in 2002, I, along with now Father Paisius McGrath, went to New Jersey, right? Georgia boy going to New Jersey, that's a story, right? And met His Eminence at the time, Archbishop Antoni, and Father Stephen Hutnick, I think, was there. And there was this young subdeacon, right? And he was and he was wearing a cassock. Can I tell that part of the story?
Well, it wasn't just a cassock; it was a collar.
Right. Yes.
I was staying with Archbishop Antoni, and we just had this funny routine, or at least I had this routine because I thought that was funny.
Because you're holy sandpaper for all of us.
Yes. He would come into the house, and I wore a clergy shirt under my cassock when we were at the office and whatnot. But he'd come into the house, take out his collar, put it down somewhere, and there were these collars all over his house because he was always needing to put one in to do whatever. And the second he would put it down, I would put it in my shirt. And after maybe the first week, he gave up yelling at me to take that out. And it almost became normal that I was wearing it around the house. And he's used to seeing men in them. So it just grew on him to the point where neither of us noticed if I was wearing it or not. And I forgot to take it out when this new recruit came to meet His Eminence for the first time. And boy, is it a good thing the camera's not on, because I'm all sorts of red right now recalling this.
Oh, it was funny. It was so funny. Because, you were young, right?
Yep.
You still look young, right? So it's, you can never tell, right? But I was like, huh. But then it was funny, and it was neat seeing the way that, that, because that was the first time that I'd met him. And to see the interaction between you two, I was like, oh, this is a real person here, right? So yeah. that was cool. And then in 2007, you got this brand new priest assigned to your parish, and as a subdeacon, it was kind of your job to take him under your wings and show him what for. And I remember once, it's so awesome that you need that for continuity, right? And also for training. So you were still young. How old were you when I got in 2007?
Maybe 20.
Okay, yeah. So young man, still in school. And so the funniest thing for me, so I had no idea. My predecessor did an awesome job. He was wonderful. So say a few words about my predecessor.
Sorry, I was doing math to see how old I was. I was on the calculator. I was 25 in 2007.
Okay, I was going to say, you're a little older than that. You were done with school and you were teaching. So Father John Harvey was my predecessor of blessed memory. And just a wonderful, just, if you've ever met him, he was a fixture at camp and stuff, and we still miss him. And, he did an excellent job over the phone, getting me ready, because it was my first assignment. But we didn't have any time overlapping at the parish, right? So it's not the case where he could even show me where stuff was, right? So it got time for Lent, and I can't find the Epitafios Plastinica. So I just ordered one. I was like, heck, there are all kinds of things that I needed to buy when I became a priest. This is another one of them, right? And so Subdeacon John comes in to help me get everything ready, right, for Great Lent. And I pull this Plastinica out, and he goes, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, this is a Plastinica. Have you heard of these?" No, I know that's what it is, but why aren't you using ours? And I was like, I looked everywhere. I assumed the parish didn't have one. I can't find it. And I really had looked everywhere I could think of. Although Subdeacon John knew where all the hiding places were. And, like up those stairs, you remember the stairs that go up from the secret,
Oh, yeah.
there's a secret door in the vestry that goes to there's a ladder that goes up to infinite space, right? So it could have been up there because I didn't know the secret door. I didn't know the ladder. But that's not where it was. Do you remember where it was?
Yes, our altar had a secret compartment in it. It wasn't one that was covered by vestments to the floor. It was a style that the woodwork was the feature, and behind it, in between the Rapidia and its back, there was a sliding door you could open, right? And that's where it was.
Yeah.
With all the
The
goodies.
secret door in the altar. I was like, are you kidding me? And there it was. And I'm like, yeah, if you're going to have a secret door in your altar, of course you're going to put your Plastinica in there, right? And there it was, and it was beautiful, and everything worked great. But that's just one example of the many ways that Subdeacon John helped me out as I tried to grow into a workable priest. And then, and now here he is. He's a priest and has been for a while, right? And Father John is serving in Carnegie, right? Saints Peter and Paul. Wonderful parish, right? And I hope that you have people, whether they're subdeacons or not, that have kind of taken you under their wing, so to speak, to show you around and stuff.
Well, so I had several months where the former pastor was still here. So he showed me everything, and it was wonderful because, and I was coming in from Chicago every weekend, and I would land Saturday, serve Vespers, serve liturgy the next day, and then fly back to Chicago. This happened from July 1st to December 1st. But every week, he was showing me even what key opened what door. So I had like this great tool asset that wasn't shy, wasn't upset with me. He really wanted me to be successful. And even when I served my first Christmas liturgy, he called and said, do you want me to stop by and walk you through it? And I said, really? He said, well, have you done it alone yet? And I said, I haven't. He said, why don't we go over some rubrics? He was just so pastoral to me when he could have been bitter. I took his spot, and that's hard, but he did not have anything against me. He wanted nothing but the best and success for me. So I had a really different formation than you did, that I didn't have to look for anything. He told me all the hiding spaces. And we do have neat ones, not in the altar, but under where the proscomidi is. It looks like just a piece of wood built into the wall, and it opens up. And there's a huge hiding space for chalices and discos and everything you could imagine. And there's one on each side, but nobody knows about it.
They do now.
Yeah.
Both of our listeners now know exactly where. Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, y'all overlapped for a while. Right. And
Yes.
and something there. So your first assignment, how you grew up. You're one of the wonderful things about your vocation, and there are many, is that you grew up, you were born into the UFC USA, you grew up, you found Christ, you grew in him as a member of one of our parishes, right? And that's a tremendous blessing. But every parish does things a little bit differently. And so to have him there, and he'd been there forever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And very deliberate, right? So if he's doing it a way, it's because it's the right way. and and I'm teasing him there, but I'm teasing every priest.
Yes.
And so you get, this is what they're used to. So that's what you hear when you say, look, I know isn't what you necessarily were taught in seminary. This is the way we do it here, or this is what they're used to, or this is the right way. However it was phrased for you, right?
Yeah.
You got to have that data, because sometimes you're going to want to do things your right way, but you always want to know, what are people going to be expecting? That has to be a part of your pastoral calculation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can tell a funny story on that. So when my predecessor, Father Steve, was here, apparently he changed the direction that they walk around the church on Pascha. So my first Pascha, someone says to me, "Which direction are we going?" And I said, "What do you mean?" As if that could be a question. And they said, "Well, when Father Steve came, he changed it." And now I'm thinking, did he change it from wrong to right, or from right to wrong? So I don't want to throw him under the bus, and I asked, what direction have you been going? And he said, well, when we get out of the doors, he takes a left. But he's been here for 30 years, and that's the way we've been doing it. But prior to him, we went right. And I said, I'm familiar with taking a left when we exit the church. And this guy, the color came back to him, and he's like, okay, good, because that's what we got used to. And I'm like, oh. Yeah, you're asking me on like Good Friday. We're about to head out, and what direction do we go?
Yeah, and what else am I not going to be ready for?
Yeah. Do you guys do 3 or 40 times around?
Yeah, it is so important. I like the way you put that. You don't throw the former priest under the bus. None of them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just not the right way. And if you're interested in this kind of thing, if I can toot my own horn, I did a couple of episodes of Good Guys Wear Black on how to do transitions, both as the incoming and as the outgoing. And we're blessed. Both of us have been blessed with healthy transitions where people were pretty intentional about it, and that's nice. It's so awesome. So another thing that I love about your vocation, Father John, is that you spent time doing stuff, right? You may not remember it because you thought you were just 20 when I showed up, but no, you went to school and you studied to be a teacher, right? And
Yes.
So when I met you, you were teaching, and it was obvious. I mean, you love the kids. What kind of preparation for that? Looking back, what kind of tools did that give you? And first, talk about specifically about studying human development, stuff like that, and then we'll talk about having that gap between college and seminary.
Sure. Well, the studying human development was huge. And one of the funny stories I like to tell people when I'm giving church tours, because they're surprised we have a married priesthood, I said, studying elementary education taught me everything there is to possibly know about kids. And then I had a kid. And they make a face at that. And I'm like, well, my first year of teaching, if a kid came in with 2 different socks or no socks, I'm like, what is wrong with the parent? And then when I had a kid, I'm like, I got him out of the house. Whew. Wait, well, did he have socks on? It didn't matter. Like it was totally different. So yeah, there was a little bit of that, that I luckily I knew everything because it was in a book, and that was the right way to do it. But getting into teaching was neat too, to understand what like a business atmosphere was. What's expected when people email you. Now there's leeway when you're a teacher, at least when I was a teacher, technology wasn't, we weren't on Zoom, so you weren't teaching from your computer. So you actually had a 6-hour window to answer an email before someone got mad. But once you post a grade, parents are texting and emailing because they have instant access to it, and they want a response as quickly as they reached out. That actually shaped a lot of the priesthood, like letting people know my limits, that I'm not always going to respond within seconds. Um, well, here's the best way to contact me if there's an emergency, and setting those boundaries and following through. That was huge. Having a corporate setting, if you will, was very important. And then keeping files was one of the biggest things I learned from teaching, just setting myself up for success, coming in, having, I don't do this on parishioners, but having a file in each kid, and putting things away, because it's going to come back. There's going to be a need to know, when did that kid go to the doctor and miss a test? How many house blessings did I do last year? Well, I can look that up. These are good figures to have and work from. And I think my first year of teaching, I just kept a pile, not a file. And it bit me because I didn't understand what to do with all this stuff. I knew don't throw it away, but I could never look back to it because it wasn't organized. And that was another big help, was being organized. Having that corporate experience of people are going to expect things of you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, let's play on that for a little bit, because, and this is one of those things that I was surprised to see. It's because I was a late vocations. My expectations of professional behavior were formed in academia and then in the bureaucracy, the federal bureaucracy. And the expectations were not met once I became a part of this other bureaucracy called the church. And I'm still surprised by how often I'll send out an email or something and not get any response, right? And it's, as a political scientist, we study different cultures, right? And it's not the kind of rational, legalistic culture that developed in the West. It's more of a, patron-based, it's weird. It's weird. And so I'm always happy when I get a response from another priest or somebody, I'm like, whew, because otherwise, with my personality, I'm like, what, did I upset them? I mean, do I smell bad? And the equivalent there is, is there something about me on the internet that makes them hesitant to respond to my emails, and stuff. It's really, it's weird. It's weird. And I never know quite what to make of it when people don't respond. So we appreciate this, Father John, that you are willing to, set out, this is what to expect from me, right? This is how long it'll be at the longest until I get in touch with you. If I'm not in touch with you within that time, it means that I didn't get it, Try
Yes.
again. Right. That's so useful. And yeah, I agree with you on child development. You learn a lot about things in books, like we did about parishes, right?
Oh, yes.
Because growing up, you grew up in the church, you're like, I know what it's like to be Orthodox. Yeah. And then you read the books and learn how to be a priest. Yeah, okay, I got it.
Yep.
Surprise.
Yes.
So that takes us to the next subject. First of all, what was you did the same progression that I did, right? If I remember correctly, you went to the Antiochian St. Stephen's program.
Yes.
Back when we were using that for our diaconal preparation, right? And now we have our own program that does that. And then you did our priestly finishing school, right? You did our weekend program.
Yep.
That gave you the additional education to become a priest, right? So, what was your favorite, class, or your favorite thing about that form of preparation for you?
I know you don't hold the grade book anymore, so you don't have to think of this as brown nosing, but I like the pastoral theology with you because, so I don't know if the listeners understand, I did a distance learning program through our seminary, which meant I had to show up one weekend a month, but still had assignments throughout that month until we were in person again. And most of the assignments with other professors was reading and papers. But you sent us every week a different scenario that could come up in a parish. And I got a lot out of that. And the biggest thing I learned was ask more questions. See where the other person's coming from. Understand them before you try to assess the problem, because there's always a bigger picture. And if we go in, horns first like a bull, we're going to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
and that was really helpful now, and I need to keep doing that and reminding myself, ask more questions, get more information. So that was probably my favorite. I also liked your style of teaching because you were comfortable with what you did. If we noticed it was a nice day outside and you said, "Boy, it's really nice out," you said, "Okay, well, let's do the afternoon in the cemetery." We just walk laps
Yeah.
because you also told us we need to care for ourselves, and that if we're sitting at our desk too long at home, we need to get out and move. We can't just keep packing Doritos in just because those emails are important.
Yeah. And that cemetery, let's face it, that cemetery is just an awesome, you know,
Oh yeah,
it's, and to be connected with the lives that are represented in there is just awesome, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, right. So, yeah, I'll go back and I'll increase your grades, right? Yeah, I'm glad. I love teaching those classes because for me, it's real, and I know how I've struggled, and I know some of the tools that are useful for me, and I've read enough to see that there are tools that other people have found useful, and we try to present those. Yeah. What about the St. Stephen's program?
It's funny coming in to these classes thinking you know more than the other guys because, well, they're converts, and it was this us versus them, and that's an unfortunate mentality, but that's what I went into, and I think I was like 20 when I started that. Or I don't know how old I was. I mean, I shouldn't say ages anymore, huh? um, Young and naive. I thought because I'd lived this, I knew more, and it was astounding what I didn't know. Sure, I could make the sign of the cross better than anyone else because it was muscle memory, but I couldn't answer the questions they could, or the people coming from the backgrounds that knew the Bible inside and out. And I would say, okay, what's the order of the Gospels? There's Matthew, and then there's three others, right? Like they just knew stuff that I didn't know, and that was humbling, but also forced me to study hard to catch up. I thought I'd be ahead of the class because this is my life,
Right.
but instead it pushed me to have to read those heavy books.
Yeah, and for me, it was kind of the opposite, right? Because I'm a book guy, right? Before I became Orthodox, I read more books than most people ever read about Orthodoxy, right? And then you go into something like the St. Stephen's program, and it's set up for that. It's that academic sort of thing, and you can get, especially if you're prideful like I am, you can get this false idea that I've got like I've got the leg up on everybody else because I know all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you find out, no, you don't know. You know in the head, but your heart, right, hasn't been formed in the way that these other people's have. And that's the humility that I needed, is to say, oh, because look, we got a lot of converts who listen to us, and the witness of the convert is fantastic. But man, don't be blind to the tremendous witness of the cradleborn, because when you look and you see who's showing up when it's time to clean the bathrooms or whatever, it can be the convert, especially if it's their first 2 or 3 years, right? When there's still
Yes.
that energy. But it's consistently, day in, day out, the people who grew up in that or another parish. And that's something that converts have to grow into, is this recognition that I can't rely on zeal and energy, and it love is duty, and that's what the cradle person really brings. The witness that they bring to this is this love of the parish that is exhibited not in reading more books or going to every single service that's offered, but by being there, being dependable, reliable, year in, year out. And let me tell you something. I'm sure that you have that in spades because your mom does. Your parents really set that kind of example, and
Yes.
God bless them for that.
In one of the parishes that I was in as a deacon in Palos Park, their parish just had such a variety of people with talents that all wanted to use them for the glory of God and for the church. So there was a guy who was an electrical engineer, and anytime lighting fixtures needed to be replaced or anything, he donated his time through that. There was a dentist, and the priest family and anyone who really was in need, he took care of and would not charge them. Like that was his ministry, through his talents. The same thing with an orthopedic surgeon. I remember he wrote Matushka a script for penicillin, because we were with him, and even though that's not his thing, he was like, "Yeah, here, this will make it easier for you if I just do it. I can see, as a doctor." But everyone had different talents. There was a guy who was a truck driver, and I remember he delivered a piano, to get it out of the rectory. Everyone used their talent in that parish. It was wonderful to see. But it was also wonderful that they had such a variety of talents. I mean, they were across the board.
Yeah, yeah. And let me tell you, I'm gonna say this again, right? Because I want to make sure that people hear this, right? You don't know what you're blind to, right? And when you so what I could do, my natural instinct, because I'm prideful, is I take what is the best version of me, and then I teach that as the standard of what Christian behavior is in a parish. So, I'm at my best when I do this, that, this. I tithe, I say all my prayers, I come to all the services, I read these books, and whatever, right? And then you see somebody who doesn't come to all the service. They'd rather pinch perahi than come to a weekday service, right? What? And your first instinct is like, what? We are, backwards. we are, we are. I got some catechizing to do, right? and then you and then reality wakes you up, and you say, wait a second, these, and you just love the pierogi pinchers, right? You just fall in love with them, and not just with the new zeal of the person who shows up, your new convert who shows up and wants to go to every service. You're like, yeah, let's see if we can't find what people's gifts are, and they may be different, and help them develop them to the glory of God, right? And some of the priests that are listening right now, they're like, yeah, but everyone still should come to all the services, right?
You know what though? So I had someone ask me why I serve so many services, and I said it's the opposite of what you said some priests might be thinking. I said, I serve all these services because it's my job and it's my love.
Yeah.
I also serve all these services so that people have options. It is not their job, and they need to pick what fits their schedule. And by having a lot, they can get to more than a Sunday liturgy, which I think is every priest's goal, to get people to more than a Sunday liturgy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you, but I know that priests that this is one of their stressors, is the fact that their attendance is so bad. But I tell people at the beginning of Holy Week, especially when I was a full-time priest, I did it just because of my love, and because I had chanters who were willing to work with me. I would do every service for Holy Week, right?
Yes.
But I had to tell people, I said, look, not only don't I expect you to see you at all these services, I better not see you at all these services, because especially those of you with families and jobs and so on, there's this is who I am. I'm your priest. This is what I do. And just like you don't expect lay people to behave like monastics, you don't expect them to behave like priests either. So probably controversial there. So there are many things that you learned in seminary, and I got to watch you, develop as you went through the seminary experience. And, I saw you grow, and was blessed to be, a very small part of that growth process. But I also have seen you grow since becoming a priest, right? There's no way that we can develop a program, whether it's full-time resident program or it's a mixed one like we have, that is going to soup to nuts get somebody just completely ready to hit the ground running, right? What are the big gaps that you've found as you've been serving as a priest?
So the first thing that I noticed right out of the gate was I didn't know enough about confession. I would have loved to have done some mock confessions to ease me, to not say something stupid to someone. I believe my first confession with someone was, "This is my first confession." Okay, terrible way to start. Like, all right, yes, I have nerves, but why would I announce that to someone? Like, oh, man, such a Homer Simpson kind of move, right? Just lay it out there and let you judge me because that was a dumb thing. Um, but yeah, so I think some role playing there would have been helpful. Also, I'm also learning that a lot of confessions are general. People say this. A lot of people say the same thing, and having kind of a response in those mock confessions would have been helpful. Have something built up, so that they're ready to maybe progress beyond those same statements that. And I don't mean one individual with the same statement. I mean many people are saying the same thing. And I'm sure our priests can understand exactly what I'm saying there without revealing what they're saying, because that's another funny thing. This rule: if someone says something in confession, you can't bring it up to them unless they bring it up outside of confession. So more with that. Um, Sorry, I was going to give an example almost. That's not going to work. Sorry,
Yeah.
read me
So
on the question.
no. So that's right. So with the confession, that's a great point because you know how you confess, and in the UFC USA, we've got a kind of culture where you're actually encouraged to go to different priests. Like when you're at convention or a sabor, or during Lent, we bring other priests in to help with confessions so that everyone gets them. So you've seen different styles of priest, right?
Yeah.
And at camp, certainly, right? So you have some variation, right? But yeah, I love your point. And the thing that I'm trying to teach now is, look, get out of the way, especially when you're young. Just get out of the way, right? So, anyways, so so what we were talking about is things that you'd not maybe wish you'd learned in seminary, but certainly gaps.
Yes. Yeah, one of those gaps too was just, how do I talk to someone who's old enough to be my grandfather? Um, and I actually heard in a podcast, I think it was St. Vlad's, they put stuff up every so often, and this bishop addressed that, and he was talking to graduating seminarians, and he said, how do you talk to someone who's you're old enough to be your grandfather? And he said, you talk to them as if they're your grandfather, and they'll respect you back. There isn't a huge age gap, but they'll respect your priesthood. You don't have to try to act like they're a child to you just because you have the title father. And that really rang to me too. Yes, it's okay to treat a grandfather figure as a grandfather. And one of the blessings I had at this parish when I first arrived, officially arrived, one of the parishioners visits our shut-ins once a week. And he said, I'm going to take you and introduce you to every single person. And he did, like a grandfather. And I followed him like his grandson. I didn't have to, have any authority in that situation. He introduced me because that's who he was proud of. He was proud to have his priest, and he was excited that these people would now have 2 visits a week. And he asked me, he said, what day is good for you? My schedule's flexible. So our shut-ins were getting 2 visits a week because he took the time to bring me like a grandson, and that here's a proud statement, was humble enough to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
If I was authoritative, I could have said, no, I'll meet these people on my terms or whatever. But it was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and you could have had him introduce you, and then you take it over, right? Because you're the priest,
Right.
you're wearing the cross, right? Yeah, that would work so well.
Yes.
Yeah. So what else?
Well, on that note, another gap was, and I don't mean to keep saying role playing. Obviously I'm an elementary school teacher, right? But that would have helped too. How do you go into a hospital room versus a nursing home room? Because my nursing home room visits take about 45 minutes, but my hospital room visits, I try to keep under 10. They're there to heal, but your nerves can get the best of you. And sometimes people can puff you up saying, oh, thank you for coming. And that makes you want to stay because it feels good to be complimented and built up. But you have to be strong with yourself to get in and get out. And that's another funny thing with you bringing the gifts to someone if they're able to receive them. you are probably not doing every single thing the book says. You're deviating from seminary, which is hard. But I, again, have great mentors. Father John Nakonechny. One time I was just passing from Illinois to Pennsylvania, and I stopped by his house for free food, because that's what you do when you're a deacon. Stayed there for the night, and he didn't let me off the hook. Matushka went off with his wife, and they did something fun, and he said, well, I'm doing my visitations tonight, and you're coming with me. And he showed me that in the hospital, it was a 10-minute thing. And in the nursing home, we spent plenty of time sitting and listening, not talking.
Oh, and he is so good at that. Man,
Yes.
yeah, he really, I mean, he just connects with people so well. Fantastic to have that kind of mentorship. Yeah, great point. Great point. There's a difference because it looks the same. It's on your visitation schedule, and
Yes.
when you're making your schedule, you might give them equal time. Nope,
Yep.
nope. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Well, so when the parishioner that brought me around to different facilities, his name is Dr. Steve Civilich. I want to give him credit because
Oh,
he's another wonderful person.
yeah,
In observing him with people, I also learned that I'm not just visiting my people. If I'm going to show up weekly, I'm ministering to that whole crowd. He still visits one secretary. Our parishioner at the facility has passed away, but every week he still goes, comes in, says hi to the secretary, chats with her for about 5 minutes, and leaves, because she needs that. She used to love his interaction because he didn't walk in and wave at her as if she's nobody. He looked her in the eye and treated her as a human being. And so I learned that. And the staff at one facility in particular always chatted me up and enjoyed, and asked sometimes if I would visit other people because they were lonely or needed it. And that's outstanding too. Again, it can get to you pridefully, right? You're going to this place and people are recognizing you for a good thing, and wow, I'm really doing great. I'm making all the check marks on my way toward heaven. So steer clear of pride. Continue to go to confession, but it is wonderful that to be able to minister, and that there's a desire. One time, so I would visit this lady. The time always worked out. They were doing bingo. And because she had dementia, I didn't want to wheel her into her room and be alone in her room because people can make accusations, right? Another thing we need to do is be careful. So I kept her in the public room in bingo, and we did communion there. It was not ideal, but it worked for the situation. And there was a substitute aide in there doing bingo one day, and he looked at me and he said, do you want to move? I said, no. And he said, well, we're doing the sacrament of bingo. And he said, to these people, that's just as important as what you got. I said, oh, I know. And he just kind of smiled, and we went on. But it was wonderful. And I think paying attention to your surroundings and not thinking everything has to be perfect. Lay out the white cloth, put a candle down, burn some incense. No, make it work. Bring Christ to these people. Let everyone see that you're praying together.
right. Yeah, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. But it's those nuances that do get skipped in seminary, right? We know how to bring the little chalice, and that it's just wine, it's not the blood, and all the technical stuff is
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
which is very important. But we didn't have enough, or I didn't have enough time learning about the people to whom I'd be ministering.
yeah. No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and Father Basil was a wonderful mentor for me on that, and I got to go with him on some of his hospital visits, and just just wonderful. Very different personality than me and different than you, but to watch how it works so well. So, anyways, yeah, yeah, fantastic. What more? What else you got?
My other big gap, and it's kind of funny because I have a deacon who went through the same program I did. And so every so often I'll learn something new and say, did you get this? And he'll say, no, I didn't know that. If someone's interested in, or they're beginning the priesthood, read through all 4 volumes of the Book of Needs. And if you can't read every word, read through the table of contents to know what's there. Those are outstanding resources, along with brother priests. But I'm very fortunate that I live in a pretty active area of Pennsylvania, and we've got people coming into the faith, and I need to figure out how to bring them in. And that the Book of Needs, there's one whole section on what faith they're coming from, how to bring them in, and that was fascinating. And there's so many different little things, like we order candles and wine and all these things that need to be put in the church. Well, until I read through the Book of Needs, it never even occurred to me that the priest had been blessing these things when I just wasn't in church. The candles show up and you put them away in the closet until you need them. No, there's a prayer to bless candles. The wine, you put it away in a closet until you need it. No, there's a prayer for blessing wine. There's so much in those books of needs, or Book of Needs, that needs to be utilized. And that was another funny thing. So I had them, but we never had assignments from them. So, the suggested reading didn't get done.
Yeah, and by the way, your professors know that because you don't have time, you don't have the ability really to absorb as much. And the one who's the best about this is Father Gabriel. His syllabus is like 20 pages, and it's mostly recommended readings. And the point there is that you teach people enough so they're not going to hurt anybody, Lord willing. And then, as a priest, you're like, oh yeah, I really need to read this now, right? And so you just continual learning, just keep picking it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and books of needs, I like that. Yeah, because they're right behind me. There's 4 of them, the books of needs.
You made a comment. You learn enough not to hurt anybody, and that reminds me of a class you had with us about funerals. And it was kind of funny because the language you used was a little shocking to us. You said, we're going to talk about the drug deals today. And all of us students are looking at each other like, what? Is this how you supplement your income? Okay, well,
we're not allowed to do absolution. I mean, pray for, get people to pay for sacraments. So
yes, simony.
Right. So so what was that all about? The drug deals?
It didn't make as much sense in the classroom as when it had to happen in real life. Those drug deals are making everyone happy, or making it work for this situation without setting yourself up for failure in future situations. If someone wants a closed casket funeral, our bishops say, well, then the viewing has to be closed casket. It's all or none. Either if the casket's open in the funeral home, then it's open during the funeral service. Which actually makes a lot of sense. Why have it open in one place but not the other?
And just so people know, the strong preference is that it's always open. Our bishops say, look, the standard for Orthodox Christians is open casket, but then they have to put what is the non-negotiable, and so that's the non-negotiable. If it's open during the viewing, it's got to be open in church. Otherwise, because you can get a priest, and both of us, our temptation is people pleasing, right? And the good part of that is that we're attentive to people's needs, right? And if there's a way to make it work, we will. The challenge, though, is where are the boundaries, right? And like you said, what you soon learn is that if you make an exception for one family, one person, there is no mechanism to keep it from becoming the new standard.
Right. Yeah. Words out. And that's exactly it. The new standard. That was something. So I recently had my first closed casket funeral. And prior to COVID, the pre-arrangements were made that the body was actually never going to come into church. That's just what this person wanted. And at a parish council meeting, I brought up, I said, I'd like to put an article in the bulletin about reminding people, first of all, to make pre-arrangements, and second, what our view on open caskets are, so that people can let their children know and everything. And the people say, oh, yeah, we know that. If it's going to be closed casket, it has to be outside the church. And I said, what? And they said, well, that's what our last priest said. I said, fine, let's keep that. Let's not set a new standard. And I think, again, one of those little things we need to pay attention to is keeping consistency. That works. There's nothing wrong with that. If they want a closed casket, sure, we can tell them it has to be out of church, and maybe they'll be more open to having it open so that they can be in church. Right? There's always that hope. So I didn't put my foot down on that because people don't always love change. You have to weigh it. What's the big thing there? So.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, and I'm sure you were like, look, this wouldn't have been necessarily my choice for a standard operating procedure, but this is what they're used to, and it's acceptable and it works, right? So don't go changing things, just because it'll be a little bit better. Because what you soon find out is that, yeah, so yeah, I like the way you put it. Some people don't like change.
Yeah. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's like the understatement of the year.
Yeah. Ugh.
Oh man, yeah, and there are so many things that we don't get to in seminary, and you're like, well, yeah, man, oh goodness gracious, they're gonna hit this, they're gonna hit that, and in the we still don't have classes for married priests, married seminarians, to work with them as a couple, right?
Yes.
Ideally, we would. Ideally, we maybe not in a class, but you have some conversations, right, about what that looks like and the sorts of things that are going to come up. And in fact, it's probably better out of a class, right? So you can be more open. The kinds of things that all families are going to go through, all couples are going to go through, and that it's just part of figuring out how to match the needs of the new position as a priest, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, any other things that you look back and you're like, man, I did not expect this.
Off the top of my head, I mean, outside of a pandemic, off the top of my head, no, I can't think of anything right now. As we continue, I will. Speaking of marriage, though, very quickly in our rectory, so we're living in a rectory. I told Matushka that she doesn't have to answer the phone, the landline, because that is supposed to be for the rectory, and essentially those are all calls for me. She's not giving that number out, and she doesn't have to take any messages at church. And I had to let the people know that she's not my secretary. If they have something, there's lots of ways to reach me: email, text message, paper. There's phone calls. There's all sorts of ways to reach me. Please don't assume that you can give things to her and say, would you pass this along to Father? Would you tell Father this? That's really not fair to her. She has a job, and her employers never asked me to pass along messages to her. And I don't think anyone else would expect their spouse to come in and be like, oh yeah, your boss said it. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. For me, that was one of the weirdest things, is these unwritten expectations. And some of them are pretty unreasonable, right? And by unreasonable, I mean, they're sustainable, right? But they're the kind of expectations that you would never put on anybody else in any other situation, right? So I'm glad that you're doing that. And the priest that follows you, I will thank you now for him, right? Thanks for doing that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I still know that I don't appreciate the things that my wife, goes through as a priest's wife. Yeah, yeah. And these unwritten expectations, it's so strange. So for all the other jobs that I've had, either as part of the interview or as part of the on-ramp, procedure, is a list of criteria. These are the things that you have to do. These are the things that we're going to be evaluating your performance on. And this is how we're going to evaluate your performance. This is the feedback mechanism and all that. Didn't get that. Did not get that as a priest, right? And so you end up finding them. I mean, there's a list. Like, even if you want a formal list, you can go to the Constitution of the UFC USA, and you can look and see, this is what a priest does, these are the duties, this is what the bishop is going to judge him on.
Yeah.
And you can go into your parish bylaws and you can say, see if there's anything extra, right? But that's not the list. I mean, it's a list. I mean, certainly you have to provide the sacramental needs, you have to provide education, right? But come to find out, you're being evaluated constantly on a whole lot of things that have never been said out loud.
Yes. The length of your beard, how you maintain the flowers in front of the rectory. Funny things like the beard and the flowers, but then other things too. I can't think of a big one off the top of my head, but you're right. All these things that have never been expressed to you that you're just supposed to either know um, or you figure out the hard way.
Right, and this is why, having you've got a deacon who's been in that parish for a long time. I had you and others, right, to help me with this, and so you really you do need that. But I'd like to see us as a church, become more upfront about that. And parish boards, if you're on a parish board, I encourage you to think about what are the expectations being put on a priest, right? And have that conversation on a regular basis, because, and as a parish board, you may not know about additional demands that are coming in sideways at the priest. So, anyways, yeah. How about the other stuff? Did we teach you how to preach well enough? Did we teach you how to serve the services well enough?
Um, Not all the services, and I think that was a trouble with distance learning. Only going there once a month, there, this might shock people, but there were things more important than the rubrics of every single service that we needed to know to form us into a better pastor. I remember Father Basil used to look at us when we would ask questions and say, "It's in the books. Like, can we move on to something that I can teach you from my experience? Can I enrich you with something you can't do on your own?" He would just get so frustrated with us with those questions.
Yeah, you're
Um,
going to have the books. You're not going to have me.
yes. So yeah, we could have had more walkthroughs of services, but just like they said, it'll get better. You'll get used to it. Read the books and do it a few times, and it becomes natural. Um, I had something too. Man, my mind is all over the place. Sorry, I'm still thinking about what it would have been like to be 20. Uh,
Right. Well, that's yeah, and we can come full circle with this, right? So I told you that one of the things I really appreciate about your vocation, and I I would appreciate the opposite in someone else's vocation. So please know that I'm not setting Father John's experience up as the ideal, right? Because there are priests who are wonderful priests who they went to seminary right after college, they went to college right after high school, and right after seminary they were ordained as deacons and priests, right? Okay.
yes.
We have a lot of priests that are doing very good work that way. Father John is doing very good work having that gap time, right? And I I can't imagine me being mature enough right out of college, straight into seminary, with a new marriage, first real job, as a priest, right? First real experience as a married man, being as a married couple, the priest and Panimatka, right? I'm so thankful that I wasn't ordained to the priesthood until I was, 39, right? I think as poor a priest as I am, I would have been much worse if I'd have been ordained earlier. I also think I benefited from my 3 or 4 years as a deacon, right? I think there's a wisdom in not rushing people into the priesthood. So, and I see that in you. And I mean, I knew you when you were, in your early mid-20s, and I'm like, no, he's a wonderful subdeacon, and I bet you'd be a wonderful deacon tomorrow. But priest, let's give it a little bit of time. Let's give
Yeah.
it a little bit of time. Yeah, but your ministry is a real blessing, right? And that's pretty much our hour. And there are other things, right, that we didn't teach you, about some of the joys, some of the heartbreaks, right? But you can't tell people. It's maybe if we had a class on poetry or something, you can't tell people about the depth of love. You're really going to fall. You think you love the liturgy now? Just wait until you've served as a priest a few times. You think you really love the people in your parish now, right? Just wait until you've served them bedside when they're sick, and you've been with them as they lost loved ones. You've heard their confessions. You've felt their tears. All this, the depth of love, and how that love can be shared with so many people, right? It's incomprehensible. So I could have told you that in seminary, but you'd have been like, yeah, I get it. Check.
Yeah. No, yeah, you have to experience it to understand it. And you're right, that love, I'm still astounded how hard I can get hit in a relationship. Just seeing someone else hurt, and because of my love for them, I hurt. My day of visitations, Matushka knows the second I walk in the door how things went, because I visit a variety of people. Some of the shut-ins are verbal, some are nonverbal, and seeing people progress one way or another is tough or exciting. And she knows immediately when I walk in the door. I think it's a position of my shoulders if it was a tough day or not. Um, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could, sorry.
yeah, and that decompression time, right? I bet you she knows you well enough to know, look, this is what he needs right now. You know, I like when I come in from that, my wife, she just kind of isolates me, lets me decompress a bit, you know, because not only have you been so open to the service of people who are in great need, right, and assessing that need, and then figuring out what the proper pastoral response is, you've taken yourself out of that, right? Even though, like you said, you're so affected by it, you know, both the highs and the lows. You know, how can it not, right? But it's not about you, right? It's not about you in that moment. It's about figuring out what their need is, and then so you put that off and you serve, and then you come home and you're like, right, and then
Yes.
you come back to yourself and yeah, and that's why we say priests need friends, priests need, you know, wives.
Yes.
You gotta have somebody who's going to be for the as you recover from those things.
I know we're close to our mark, but I just want to make one more comment. That another surprise. I finally thought of another one. We always had this joke about PLNs after liturgy, post liturgical nap. And as a deacon, I didn't understand. So I was a deacon for 6 years, and I was in two different parishes. One was a cathedral, and one was a parish, and I never was exhausted after liturgy. I couldn't understand why the priests needed naps. And some priests would say, well, you know, serving with all your heart and soul really takes a lot out of you, and if you're not fatigued, you weren't praying hard enough. And I think, at least two priests say that, and I thought, what am I doing wrong as a deacon that I'm not exhausted? It's coffee hour. Everybody brings a week's worth of questions to you. Everybody wants just a small piece of your time. As a priest, coffee hour is exhausting because now during the pandemic, I'm back to feeling like a deacon. I actually have energy after liturgy. There's no coffee hour. I go home and I can go for hikes or bike rides with my son. I'm fine. But coffee hour and meetings, oh man, that's what takes everything out of you. In an empty cup, you got mediocre coffee, and you're supposed to be a bumblebee going from table to table, talking to everybody, and then sit through a meeting with this mediocre coffee. Oh no, that's something they didn't prepare us for. It's coffee hour as a priest. You know, you think you're fine because you grew up going to coffee hour. You get your fill of jelly donuts. No, it's not about that.
Right. Yeah, and so I'm exhausted after I serve. For one, it's an hour and a half long choral performance for one. I mean, just the exhaustion of supporting voice for that long and so on. And then also putting yourself out there in the homily. You know,
Yes.
talk about making yourself vulnerable, right? Not because we talk about ourselves, but because we're presenting something so great, and we're putting in words that our brains came up with, you know, and anyways, so exhausted. And a tendency would be, if you're an introvert like I am, is to go to coffee hour and just surround yourself with people who aren't going to demand things, right? And just, you know, enjoy that coffee, right? But no, you can't. You can't. That's the time. You got to go around and visit with each little, not each person because people clump, right?
Yes.
Each clump, right? And honestly be there with them and let them just see your joy, your joy at being connected with them. And yeah,
But never sit down, or else you won't make it to another table. I
right.
have found if I sat down, I'm done. because then people bring you food and you feel obligated to sit and eat it with them, or it's something like soup that you can't pick up and bring to another table, and you're done. So stand, and when they keep yelling at you to sit, you say, "Oh, you know what? I have to go over here," and you walk away. But yeah, everyone wants that, just a little bit of excitement, because it's exciting to talk to the priest. They love you too,
Right.
which was hard to wrap my brain around too. There was an instant love,
Yeah.
and I thought that was kind of weird that you guys don't know me. You love the priesthood. You can't love me. And they said, "No, Father, you are our priest. We do love you.
Yeah.
You're like the new baby that we don't know your personality yet, but we're going to love you unconditionally." And that was a big shock.
And they're so generous with that love, right? So
Yes.
generous. And even after you've been there for a while, this is one of the things that I don't know if you're there yet, but they are going to eventually, no matter how hard you try, they're going to see you fail. They're going to see you get something wrong. They're going to see you in a moment of weakness, betray anger or something like that. Something's going to happen. And, then, it, as a someone tempted to people pleasing, you're like, oh, it's done. It's done. They know that I'm a complete fake, right? And no, that's when the real relationship begins, right? Not because they have something on you, but because you get to experience their forgiveness, right?
Yes.
And it's beautiful. And I tell you what, the community that you grew up in were just so amazing with that, so amazing. And that was my first assignment. And again, to the extent that I'm a useful priest, it's in large part because that community made it so easy for me to grow into that, right? All right, well, Father John, we're going to have you on again, of course, right? And we're going to work with our technical problems so that they don't have to stare at me the whole time, right? I really do appreciate your time. Do you have any last thing that came up, or any word for somebody who's listening?
Yes, if you are going to spend time with your bishop, don't put his collar into your shirt. You never know when that's going to come back to bite you. You weren't just my parish priest, you were one of my professors. I mean, you held so much of my life in your hands, and it all could have gone wrong.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and so I knew your heart from that moment, right? But it really was so funny watching the Metropolitan, the Archbishop at that time say, "No, subdeacon, not yet."
Well, I don't know if you remember, you weren't sure, the protocol of getting blessings and all this. I mean, you were pretty new to the thing. So you
Right.
got the blessing from the bishop first, because that's what you do. Now Archbishop Daniel was there. I think he was just a deacon. You kind of looked at him and he gave you like a hand signal, like, no, no, no. And then you looked at me and I didn't know what you were looking at me for. I
Yeah,
forgot I had this thing in my shirt.
you weren't wearing a cross, right?
Yeah.
And Deacon Deacon Walter,
Yes.
His Eminence Archbishop Daniel, wasn't wearing a cross. So I thought I was okay, but you never know. You never know, right? And yeah, so I really appreciated the hand signal that he gave me, and you didn't give me one. So I'm like, I have no idea.
Do I get your
This guy
blessing?
could be another bishop. I have
Yep.
no idea.
And I honestly, like I said, Metropolitan forgot it was in my shirt. I forgot it was in my shirt because it was just this thing I've been wearing around way too much in his house. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, well, Father, thank you again. And I pray that, all the blessings. And I'm so sorry in many ways that your priesthood, you haven't been a priest that long there in Carnegie before this coronavirus hits. That's a tough thing to start out doing. It's like, not as bad as it is for Father Charles, though, because that's literally the thing that happened pretty much the day after he got there. So, and pray for us, all right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, until next time, everybody, Godspeed.